The escape pod screamed through the cold sky like a dying star. Inside the small metal shell, Lyra pressed her silvery furred hands against the failing controls. Warning lights flashed red across her amber eyes. The pod shook harder with each passing second. Her homeworld was gone. Her family was gone. Everything she knew had burned under the weapons of the Valdrine Empire. For 3 weeks, she had run through the dark spaces between stars. Now her fuel was empty, and her hope was nearly gone too. The pod hit the atmosphere of the blue planet below. Fire wrapped around the small craft. Lyra closed her eyes and waited for the end. The impact came hard and fast. Metal screamed against frozen ground. Snow exploded into white clouds around the crash site. The pod tumbled and rolled, before finally stopping against a large tree. Everything went dark. Lyra did not know how long she stayed unconscious. When her eyes opened again, cold air rushed through the broken pod door. Her body hurt everywhere. Blood matted the silver fur on her left arm. The translator device on her collar sparked and died. She pulled herself from the wreckage and fell into deep snow. The white cold burned against her skin. This planet was nothing like her warm homeworld. Lyra tried to stand, but her injured leg gave out. She collapsed again. The forest around her was silent and strange. Tall trees with no leaves reached toward a gray sky. Everything was white and cold and empty. No cities, no ships, no people, just endless winter wilderness. Lyra laughed bitterly. She had escaped the Empire only to die alone on a frozen world. At least her death would be quiet. At least no one else would burn because of her. She closed her eyes and let the cold take her. Somewhere far away, door closed. Footsteps crunched in snow. A voice spoke in a language she did not understand. Strong hands lifted her from the ground. Lyra tried to fight, but her body would not respond. She felt movement, felt warmth wrapping around her. The world faded to black again. When consciousness returned, Lyra found herself in a warm room. She lay on something soft. A fire crackled nearby. The smell of burning wood filled her nose. She opened her eyes slowly. Wooden walls surrounded her. Simple furniture. A small window showing falling snow outside. This was some kind of dwelling. Panic shot through her body. Where was she? Who brought her here? Lyra sat up fast, despite the pain. Her wounds had been wrapped in clean white cloth. Someone had treated her injuries. A door opened. Lyra froze. A human walked into the room carrying a tray. He was tall, with dark hair and careful eyes. He wore simple clothes and moved with quiet confidence. When he saw Lyra awake, he stopped. For a long moment, they stared at each other. Lyra had heard of humans during her time in galactic ports. They were a young species from a backwater world. Most of the galaxy ignored them. They had no great technology or power. They were considered primitive and harmless. But this human had saved her life. The human set down the tray slowly. He raised both hands with palms forward. His voice was calm and low. He spoke words Lyra did not understand, but his tone was gentle. Lyra tried to respond, but her damaged translator only produced broken static. Frustration filled her chest. She needed to know where she was. She needed to know if she was safe. The human seemed to understand her distress. He pointed to himself. "Marcus," he said clearly. "A name." He was giving her his name. Lyra touched her own chest with a shaking hand. "Lyra," she managed to say. Marcus nodded and smiled slightly. He pointed to the tray he had brought. Steam rose from a bowl of some kind of food. He made an eating gesture. Lyra realized she was desperately hungry. She had not eaten properly in days. But could she trust this human? What if he wanted something from her? Marcus seemed to sense her hesitation. He picked up the bowl, took a small sip himself, then offered it to her again. He was showing her it was safe. Slowly, Lyra reached for the bowl. The warm liquid inside tasted strange but good. Her stomach growled with desperate need. She drank carefully at first, then faster. Marcus watched her eat with what looked like satisfaction. He brought her more food, a cup of water, and a thick blanket. He checked her bandages with practiced efficiency. His touch was gentle and professional. Over the next hour, Marcus moved around the cabin, doing various tasks. He fed the fire. He prepared more food. He brought fresh bandages. Through it all, he gave Lyra space while making sure she had everything she needed. Lyra watched him carefully. In the galactic society she knew, no one helped strangers without expecting payment. No one risked themselves for outsiders. Yet this human had carried her through freezing wilderness, treated her wounds, and asked for nothing. As the day faded to darkness outside, Lyra felt exhaustion pulling at her again. Her body needed rest to heal, but fear kept her awake. She was vulnerable here, helpless. Marcus seemed to understand. He moved to a chair across the room and settled in with a book. He made no move to approach her. He simply sat reading, a quiet presence that somehow felt protective rather than threatening. Finally, Lyra could not fight sleep any longer. Her eyes closed. She woke several times during the night. Each time Marcus was still there in his chair, watching over her, keeping her safe. 3 days passed in similar fashion. Marcus cared for her wounds, brought her food, and slowly her body began to heal. They communicated through gestures and simple drawings. Lyra learned that Marcus lived alone in these woods. He seemed content with the isolation. On the 4th morning, Lyra woke to Marcus standing at the window with a concerned expression. He held a strange device that made crackling sounds. Lyra pulled herself up to see what worried him. Marcus turned to her with serious eyes. He tried to communicate something urgent through gestures. Then Lyra heard it, a sound that froze her blood. Her damaged translator sparked to life for just one moment, translating a single word from the device's static. Scanning. Terror exploded in Lyra's chest. She grabbed Marcus's arm desperately. Through broken gestures and panicked sounds, she tried to make him understand. The Valdrine Empire had found her trail. They were searching this region, and they were coming. He had nowhere left to go. So the human made his home hers, ## Part 2. Earning trust, Marcus stared at the terrified alien in his cabin. Lyra clutched his arm with desperate strength. Her amber eyes were wide with fear. Whatever that crackling sound meant, it was bad. He had spent 4 days earning her trust through patience and care. Now that fragile trust showed in how she turned to him for protection. Marcus made a decision. He would not let her down. He gently took Lyra's hand and led her to the table. Using a pencil and paper, he began to draw. Simple pictures of ships in the sky, soldiers with weapons. He pointed at the radio, making strange sounds, then at his drawings. Lyra understood. She grabbed the pencil and drew frantically. Her pictures showed large warships and armored figures. She drew fire and destruction. Then she pointed at herself and made a running gesture. Marcus nodded slowly. Someone was hunting her. Someone dangerous. Over the next hours, they worked to communicate better. Lyra's translator would flicker to life for brief moments before dying again. Marcus brought out an old tablet computer and found pictures online. Together, they built a basic vocabulary. Lyra pointed at images of soldiers and spoke a word that sounded like Valdrine. She showed Marcus pictures of space battles and burning planets. Her hand shook as she drew a timeline showing weeks of running and hiding. Marcus listened and watched carefully. He had been a soldier once, long ago. He recognized trauma when he saw it. This woman had survived a war and lost everything. He showed Lyra his own past through pictures. Military uniform photos, rescue team badges, news clippings about a mission that went wrong. He drew pictures of mountains and avalanches, bodies that could not be saved, friends who died while he survived. Lyra studied the images with understanding in her eyes. She touched the picture of Marcus in uniform, then touched his chest. She understood. He was a warrior who had walked away from war. They sat in silence for a while. Two survivors from different worlds. Two people carrying grief they could not share with anyone else. The radio crackled again with scanning interference. Lyra flinched. Marcus checked his equipment and frowned. The pattern was getting stronger. Whatever was searching was getting closer. He estimated they had perhaps 2 days before the searchers found the crash site. Then maybe another day before they tracked Lyra to his cabin. 3 days total. Marcus began to prepare. He pulled out old equipment from storage. Military maps, weather gear, emergency supplies. Lyra watched with confusion as he laid everything out. He tried to explain his plan through gestures. They would hide her trail, make it look like she had died in the crash, send the searchers away. But Lyra shook her head violently. She grabbed Marcus's hand and pushed him toward the door. She made shooing motions. She wanted him to leave, to run. To save himself, Marcus understood what she was trying to say. She thought the Empire would kill him just for helping her. She wanted to face them alone to protect him. He looked at this strange woman with silver fur and cat-like features. She barely knew him, yet she was willing to sacrifice herself to keep him safe. That kind of courage deserved respect. Marcus shook his head firmly. He pointed at Lyra, then at himself, then at the cabin. He made a standing gesture, a refusing to move gesture. They would face this together. Tears filled Lyra's amber eyes. She tried to argue through broken translator fragments and desperate gestures. But Marcus was unmovable. He had made his choice. Over the next 2 days, they worked as a team. Marcus taught Lyra about Earth's survival, how to make fire, how to find food in winter, how to read weather signs. She learned quickly, absorbing everything with focused attention. Lyra taught Marcus about the Valdrine Empire. Through pictures and gestures, she explained their technology, their tactics, their weaknesses. She showed him how their scanners worked and what could block them. They practiced basic self-defense together. Marcus showed Lyra how to fall safely and how to use her natural speed. She showed him vulnerable points on Valdrine armor that she remembered from seeing soldiers. During breaks, they shared meals. Marcus introduced Lyra to human food. She was amazed by the variety. Her world had been advanced, but focused on efficiency. Humans seemed to cook for pleasure as much as nutrition. She particularly loved hot soup and fresh bread. Marcus made extra, pleased to see her eating well and regaining strength. One evening, as snow fell outside, they sat by the fire. Marcus played soft music on an old radio. Lyra closed her eyes and listened. Music was universal, it seemed. It needed no translation. Marcus watched her peaceful face and felt something shift in his chest. For 3 years he had lived alone in these woods, hiding from memories, running from guilt. But having Lyra here felt right somehow. The cabin felt less empty. His days had purpose again. Lyra opened her eyes and caught him watching. She tilted her head with curiosity. Through halting English words and gestures, she asked why he helped her. Marcus thought for a moment. How could he explain? He pointed at the picture of his lost team. He gestured to his isolated cabin. He touched his chest over his heart and made a braking motion. Then he pointed at Lyra. He made a protecting gesture. He touched his heart again, but this time he made a healing motion. Lyra understood. By saving her, he was healing himself. By protecting her, he found purpose again. She reached out slowly and touched his hand. In the galaxy, she knew, such gestures were reserved for family or close friends. But Marcus felt like both somehow. This strange human who asked nothing and gave everything. They sat together in comfortable silence as the fire burned low. The next morning, the radio interference was much stronger. Marcus checked his equipment with a grim expression. The search pattern had narrowed. The Empire ships were close now. Very close. He looked at Lyra with serious eyes. He showed her the maps and timeline he had calculated. By tomorrow, searchers would find the crash site. By the day after, they would track her here. It was time to make a stand. Lyra tried one last time to make Marcus leave. She pointed at the door. She made running gestures. She even tried to shove him toward the exit, but Marcus was like a mountain, unmovable, unshakable. He showed her his plans. The traps he would set, the defenses he would build. the tactics he would use. He had fought before, and he would fight again. For her, for this stranger from the stars who had become something more, something like family. Lyra finally stopped arguing. She saw the determination in Marcus's eyes. The same determination that made humans survive and thrive, despite being considered weak by the galaxy. The same stubborn refusal to abandon what mattered. She nodded slowly. If he would not run, then she would fight beside him. Together, they began final preparations. The cabin transformed into a fortress. The surrounding forest became a maze of traps and surprises as the sun set on their last day of peace. Marcus and Lyra stood together looking at the darkening woods. Somewhere out there, an Empire's soldiers were coming, but they would not find easy prey. They would not find a helpless refugee. They would find something they did not expect, something the galaxy always underestimated. They would find a human who refused to surrender, and they would learn why that was a very dangerous thing. She had nowhere left to go. So the human made his home hers. Part 3. The impossible choice. The morning air was sharp and cold. Marcus moved through the forest, checking his trap lines. Behind him, Lyra followed quietly, learning to move like he did. Silent, careful, aware. Over the past week, they had transformed the area around the cabin. Deadfalls hidden under snow, tripwires connected to alarms, false trails leading nowhere, supplies cached in secret locations. Everything Marcus remembered from his military days. Lyra had added her own knowledge. She showed him how to block the Valdrine scanners using the metal from her crashed pod. She explained their communication frequencies. She drew maps of standard patrol patterns. Together they made a plan that seemed impossible. But possible or not, it was all they had. The radio interference grew stronger each day. Marcus tracked the search grid tightening around them. The Valdrine were methodical and thorough. They would find the crash site soon. That evening, as they prepared dinner, Lyra's translator suddenly came to life with full power. She had been working on it for days, scavenging parts from the crashed pod. Now it hummed with steady energy. "Marcus," she said clearly. Her voice was soft and musical. "I can speak now." Marcus turned from the stove with surprise. This was the first time he heard her actual voice translated properly. It was strange hearing his name in clear English from her. "That is good," he replied slowly, knowing she could understand him now. "We need to communicate better," Lyra nodded. But her expression was sad. She sat at the table and gestured for him to join her. "Marcus, I must leave tonight," she said quietly. "The Valdrine will be here in 2 days. If I am gone, they will follow my trail away from here. You will be safe." "What?" Marcus shook his head. "We already discussed this. You did not understand me before," Lyra said with frustration. "Now I can explain properly. The Valdrine Empire does not leave witnesses. They will kill you just for seeing me, just for knowing aliens exist. Your world is not part of the galactic community. They will erase all evidence. Then we fight," Marcus said simply. "Fight." Lyra stood up with agitation. "Marcus, you do not understand what they are. The Valdrine Empire controls 1,000 worlds. Their soldiers have armor that deflects energy weapons. Their ships can destroy cities. You have old guns and forest traps. This is not a fight you can win," Marcus met her eyes calmly. "Maybe not, but I can make them pay for every step. I can make them remember this place. And I can keep you alive long enough to escape if needed." "Why?" Lyra's voice broke with emotion. "Why would you die for me? We barely know each other. In my world, in the galaxy, no one sacrifices themselves for strangers. It makes no sense." Marcus was quiet for a moment. He looked at the fire, at the cabin he had built, at this strange woman from the stars who had given his life meaning again. 3 years ago, he said slowly, I led a rescue team into an avalanche zone. We were trying to save trapped hikers. I told my team it was too dangerous. They followed me anyway because they trusted me. The mountain came down. 4 people died. I survived. He touched the scar on his arm. I came here to hide from that guilt, to be alone where I could not fail anyone else. Then you crashed into my forest, broken and hunted and alone. And I had a choice: help you or turn away. Marcus looked at Lyra directly. If I turn away, if I let you face this alone, then those 4 people died for nothing. Then I am still hiding, still running, still failing people who need me. Lyra stared at him with wide eyes. So you helped me to heal yourself? That is still selfish, maybe Marcus admitted. But it is also right. You had nowhere left to go, Lyra. The whole galaxy wanted you dead or did not care if you died. So I decided my home is your home now, and I protect my home. Tears ran down Lyra's silvery fur. In the galaxy she knew, such words were rare. Species helped their own kind. But humans were not even Lyra's species. They had no shared history or culture. Yet Marcus spoke of home and protection as if she belonged here. You are either very brave or very stupid, she whispered. Marcus smiled. My old commander said both could be true at the same time. Despite everything, Lyra laughed. It was a small sound, but it was real. She wiped her eyes and sat back down. Tell me your plan, she said. If we do this, we do it properly. They spent the evening going over every detail. Marcus showed Lyra his defense layout on a map. She explained Valdrine's soldier psychology and tactics. They identified weaknesses and created contingency plans. They will expect primitive resistance, Lyra explained. Humans are not considered dangerous by galactic standards. The soldiers will be overconfident. We use that, good Marcus said. Overconfident enemies make mistakes. They worked late into the night. By the time they finished, they had something that might work. It was risky and dangerous, but it gave them a chance. As Lyra prepared for bed, she paused at the door to her room. Marcus, in my language, we have a word, karash. It means family, not by blood, but by choice, by standing together when no one else will. She looked at him with soft eyes. You are my Koresh now, my chosen family. Thank you for standing with me. Marcus felt warmth spread through his chest. You are welcome, Lyra. Get some sleep. Tomorrow will be difficult. The next morning came too quickly. Marcus and Lyra worked together with practiced efficiency. They checked every trap, every weapon, every escape route. They were as ready as they could be. Around midday, the radio erupted with activity. Clear voices speaking in the Valdrine language. Lyra translated quickly. They found the crash site. They are examining it now. Marcus watched through binoculars from a hidden position. 5 kilometers away, a Valdrin scout ship sat in a clearing. Armored soldiers moved around the wreckage of Lyra's escape pod. They were bigger than Marcus expected. Nearly 2.5 meters tall, their armor was dark and intimidating. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. One soldier examined the ground around the pod. He was tracking. Following the trail Marcus and Lyra had left deliberately. A trail leading toward the cabin. They will be here by tomorrow morning, Lyra said quietly. Maybe sooner if they push through the night. Marcus nodded. Then we stick to the plan. We lead them into the kill zones. We use their overconfidence against them. We make them think twice about hunting refugees. Lyra looked at the human beside her. This strange, stubborn, brave man who refused to abandon her. She felt fear for him more than for herself. If this goes wrong, she said, if I do not survive, promise me you will run. Do not throw your life away. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, if you do not survive, there is nowhere I would run to. We finish this together or not at all. It was a terrible promise and a beautiful one. Lyra nodded slowly. They returned to the cabin and made final preparations. As the sun began to set, they sat together by the fire one last time. Neither spoke. Words seemed unnecessary now. Outside, snow began to fall. The forest grew quiet. The radio crackled with Valdrin communications drawing closer. Marcus checked his rifle one final time. Lyra tested her makeshift weapons. They looked at each other and nodded. No fear. No hesitation. They had made their choice. They would stand together. As darkness fell completely, Marcus heard something in the distance. Movement in the forest? Multiple contacts. The Valdrin had arrived early, pushing through the night. Lyra heard it too. Her enhanced hearing picked up their heavy footsteps in the snow. At least 6 soldiers, maybe more. Marcus extinguished the fire and moved to his position by the window. Lyra took her spot by the back door. They had practiced this a dozen times. The cabin grew dark and silent. Outside, shapes moved between the trees. Red scanning lights cut through the darkness. Voices spoke in harsh, alien tones. They were surrounded. Marcus felt his heart beat steady and strong. Fear was there, but controlled. Focused. This was what his training had prepared him for. Beside him, in the darkness, Lyra breathed slowly and quietly. She had been running for so long. Hiding for so long, now she stood and fought. Because a human had shown her that some things were worth fighting for. The first soldier stepped into the clearing around the cabin. His scanner swept across the building. He spoke into his communication device. Marcus's finger rested gently on his trigger. Lyra gripped her weapon. The impossible battle was about to begin. She had nowhere left to go. So the human made his home hers. Part 4. The Stand the First. Valdrin's soldier stepped onto Marcus's tripwire at exactly 2:47 in the morning. The alarm was silent, but Marcus felt the vibration through the warning system he had rigged. He touched Lyra's shoulder in the darkness. She nodded. The soldier advanced slowly toward the cabin. His scanner painted the building with red light. Behind him, 5 more soldiers spread out in standard search formation. They moved with the confidence of warriors who had never met real resistance. That was their first mistake. The lead soldier reached the porch steps. Marcus waited, counting his heartbeats. The soldier climbed the first step. Then the second. The third step collapsed under his weight. But it was not a simple broken board. Marcus had rigged it with the battery from Lyra's pod. The electrical charge that shot through the soldier's armor was not enough to kill. But it was enough to hurt. The soldier screamed and fell backward. The other Valdrin immediately raised weapons and opened fire on the cabin. Energy bolts tore through the wooden walls. But Marcus and Lyra were already gone. Sliding through the escape tunnel Marcus had dug under the floor, they emerged 50 meters away in the tree line. Behind them, the cabin burned as energy weapons ignited the dry wood. Marcus felt a pang seeing his home destroyed. But homes could be rebuilt. Lives could not. Position 2, he whispered. Lyra nodded and moved silently through the snow. The Valdrin soldiers approached the burning cabin carefully. Their commander barked orders in their harsh language. Lyra translated through her earpiece to Marcus. Says the refugee could not have survived that. He wants them to search the ruins for a body. Good, Marcus replied. Let them think we are dead. 3 soldiers moved toward the fire. The other 3 maintained a perimeter. Standard procedure. Exactly what Lyra predicted they would do. The perimeter soldiers did not see the thin wire hidden in the snow. When the first one crossed it, the deadfall trap released. A massive log Marcus had suspended in the trees came swinging down like a pendulum. It caught the soldier in the chest and launched him 15 meters backward into a tree. His armor saved his life. But he did not get back up. The other soldiers spun around in confusion. Where had the attack come from? Their scanners showed no heat signatures. No movement. Just empty forest. That was when Marcus opened fire. His rifle was old and primitive by galactic standards. But Marcus was not old or primitive. Every shot was placed with precision. He aimed for joints in the armor, for the vulnerable scanner equipment on their helmets, for the weapon power packs on their belts. One soldier's weapon exploded as Marcus's bullet found its energy cell. The Valdrin screamed and dropped the sparking device. Another soldier's helmet shattered, blinding his optical systems. The Valdrin commander roared orders. His soldiers returned fire toward Marcus's position. Energy bolts tore through trees and exploded in the snow, but Marcus was already moving to position 3. He had learned long ago that staying still in combat meant death. Lyra circled around to the other side. She moved like a ghost through the darkness. Her natural night vision and silent footsteps made her nearly invisible. She reached the confused soldier whose helmet Marcus had destroyed. The Valdrine never saw her coming. Lyra struck with the metal rod she had sharpened from pod debris. She hit the exposed joint behind his knee, exactly where she had told Marcus was vulnerable. The soldier collapsed. Lyra struck again, this time at his neck seal. He went still. She vanished back into the forest before the others could react. The Valdrine commander realized what was happening. They were not fighting primitive locals. This was coordinated, tactical, professional. He called for backup and pulled his soldiers into a defensive circle. This was good strategy, but Marcus had planned for it. The defensive circle put all 6 remaining soldiers standing directly over Marcus's main trap. He had spent 2 full days burying old propane tanks in that exact spot, covering them with snow and debris. Running a wire to a remote detonator, Marcus pressed the button. The explosion lit up the night. Snow and earth erupted in a massive blast. The Valdrine soldiers were thrown in all directions. Their armor protected them from death, but several were clearly injured. One lay motionless. Another crawled slowly away from the crater. Marcus did not celebrate. He moved to position 4 and reloaded. Beside him, Lyra appeared from the darkness. Her silver fur was matted with snow, and her eyes were hard. "Their backup will arrive in 10 minutes," she said. "A full squad. Maybe 12 more soldiers." Marcus nodded. "Then we end this before they arrive. Push them to the river." They moved together through the forest. The remaining Valdrine soldiers were regrouping. Their commander was wounded, but still fighting. He shouted orders with rage in his voice. Lyra translated. "He is calling us insects, primitives. He says we are lucky. He promises, when reinforcements arrive, we will suffer before we die." "Let him talk," Marcus said. "Angry enemies make more mistakes." They drove the Valdrine soldiers toward the frozen river. Marcus and Lyra alternated attacks. A shot from the trees. A trap triggering. A thrown rock that sounded like movement from another direction. Classic guerrilla tactics that kept the enemy confused and reactive. The Valdrine reached the river and tried to cross the ice. The commander went first to test it. The ice held his weight. That was because Marcus had spent yesterday reinforcing that exact spot with wooden supports under the ice. The commander made it across safely. The other 4 soldiers followed. They reached the middle of the river where Marcus had not reinforced anything, where he had instead carefully weakened the ice. The frozen surface cracked like thunder. 4 Valdrine soldiers plunged into the freezing water. Their heavy armor dragged them down immediately. They struggled and thrashed, but the current was strong and the water was deep. 2 managed to grab onto the ice, pulled themselves out. 2 disappeared under the dark water and did not resurface. The commander stood on the far bank and stared at the river with something like shock. He had started this hunt with 12 soldiers. Now he had 3. Against 2 primitives from a backwater world, Marcus and Lyra watched from cover. The surviving Valdrine were shaken, afraid, no longer confident. "We can finish them," Lyra whispered. "They are vulnerable now." But Marcus shook his head. He heard something in the distance. A low humming sound. The backup squad was arriving early. "Time to go," he said. "We got what we needed." "What did we need?" Lyra asked as they moved quickly through the forest. "We needed them to respect us," Marcus replied. "We needed them to report that humans are not easy prey, that this planet is more dangerous than it looks." They reached Cache Site 5, where Marcus had hidden supplies. As they gathered gear, Lyra's scanner picked up the incoming ship. It was bigger than the first one, a proper assault vessel. The new ship landed near the burning cabin. Fresh soldiers deployed with heavy weapons. Their commander immediately started shouting into communications. Lyra listened, and her expression changed. Marcus, the new commander, is furious. He is demanding authorization for orbital bombardment. He wants to destroy this entire area. Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. Orbital bombardment meant death for everything within kilometers. Trees, animals, everything. And him and Lyra, will they approve it? He asked. I do not know, Lyra said with fear in her voice. This planet is not protected by galactic law. They could do it and face no consequences. They watched the soldiers moving around the crash site. The wounded survivors were being treated. Body recovery teams searched for the soldiers who had fallen. The commander paced angrily. He was arguing with someone over communications. His body language was aggressive and frustrated. He is telling them this planet has hostile capabilities, Lyra translated. That the fugitive has military support. He wants permission to glass the entire region. Marcus checked his remaining ammunition. 4 magazines left. Some grenades. Various improvised weapons. Not enough to fight a full assault company, but maybe enough for one final stand. He looked at Lyra. Her amber eyes met his. In them he saw determination and fear mixed together. She had been running for so long. Now she stood, because a human had shown her that running was not the only option. If they approve the bombardment, Marcus said quietly, we have maybe 30 minutes. We should use that time to get you as far from here as possible. Lyra smiled sadly. We finish this together. Remember? Lyra, you do not have to. ... She put a finger on his lips. Koresh, she said simply. Family by choice. By standing together, you taught me that humans do not abandon family. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. He nodded. They prepared for what might be their last fight. Marcus checked his weapons. Lyra sharpened her makeshift blade. They said nothing. Everything that needed saying had been said. The radio crackled. The commander stopped pacing and listened. His expression changed from anger to confusion to something else. Disbelief, he argued into his communicator. His voice rose with frustration. He gestured wildly at the burning cabin and the wounded soldiers. Then he went silent. His shoulders slumped. He spoke a few more words. Then he turned off his communicator. What is happening? Marcus whispered. Lyra listened carefully to the soldiers talking among themselves. Her eyes went wide. They denied the bombardment request, she said with shock. The sector command said this operation is costing too much for one refugee. They are ordering the commander to report that I died in the crash. They are withdrawing. Why? Marcus asked. That makes no strategic sense. Lyra understood suddenly. Because we made it expensive. Because we embarrassed them. The commander lost 9 soldiers to primitives using old weapons and forest traps. If he continues and more soldiers die, he looks incompetent. If he withdraws and lies in his report, no one questions him. They watched as the Valdrin loaded their dead and wounded. The commander gave one last look at the forest. His expression was hard, angry, but also something like respect. He spoke to his soldiers. They boarded the ships. The engines hummed to life. And then they lifted off into the dark sky. Lyra and Marcus stayed hidden until the engine sounds faded completely. Then they sat in the snow and stared at each other. They had won. Against impossible odds, against galactic technology and superior numbers, they had won. That was insane, Lyra finally said. That was human, Marcus replied with a tired smile. They laughed then, deep and long. The kind of laughter that comes after surviving something that should have killed you. The kind that releases all the fear and tension. As their laughter faded, they looked toward where the cabin used to be. Only ashes remained. I am sorry about your home, Lyra said softly. Marcus stood and helped her to her feet. Come on, let us see what can be saved. We have work to do. Work? Lyra asked. Marcus smiled. A home is not just a building. It is where you belong, where you stand with those who matter. We will rebuild. In this time, we build it together. But they were good tears. Hope tears. She nodded, and together they walked toward the dawn. She had nowhere left to go. So the human made his home hers. Part 5. Home found the morning sun rose over the destroyed cabin. Smoke still drifted from the ashes, Snow was melted and blackened around the burn site. Energy weapon scorches marked the surrounding trees. The peaceful forest home Marcus had built was gone, but Marcus and Lyra stood there alive. That mattered more than any building. They picked through the ruins carefully. Most things were destroyed, but some items survived. Marcus's grandfather's knife, a metal box containing photographs, some tools stored in the shed that had not caught fire. Lyra found her translator partially melted but still functional. She also recovered several components from her crashed pod that could be useful. "What now?" she asked as they sat on a fallen log surveying the damage. Marcus looked around at his forest, his mountain, his home for 3 years. Then he looked at Lyra, this strange woman from the stars who had crashed into his life and changed everything. "Now we rebuild," he said simply. "Better this time. Stronger." Over the next weeks, they worked from sunrise to sunset. Marcus taught Lyra carpentry and construction. She learned to measure and cut wood, to drive nails straight, to think about angles and support beams. Lyra taught Marcus about materials science. She showed him how to strengthen joints using techniques from her world, how to create better insulation using salvaged pod components, how to design spaces that served multiple purposes. The new cabin rose slowly from the ashes of the old. It was smaller at first, but more efficient, better planned. Each board placed was a collaboration between human ingenuity and alien knowledge. They talked while they worked. Really talked. Not through broken translators or desperate gestures. Real conversations about life and loss and hope. Lyra told Marcus about her homeworld, about cities that floated in the sky, about music that could be felt as much as heard, about her family who died when the Valdrine came. Her voice broke when she spoke of her younger brother. He had been studying art, creating beautiful sculptures from light and crystal. He died protecting their mother during the evacuation. Marcus listened and held her while she cried. He understood that kind of loss. The empty space that never quite healed. He told her about the avalanche, about his team members who trusted him, about Sarah, who had been planning her wedding, about Chen, who had a newborn daughter, about Rodriguez, who played guitar and sang off-key. He had carried their deaths alone for 3 years. Speaking their names out loud to Lyra felt like releasing weight he did not know he could put down. "They would have liked you," he said quietly. "They would have said helping you was the right thing to do." "I wish I could have met them," Lyra replied. "They raised a good man." They buried a marker near the cabin, a stone with carved names. Sarah, Chen, Rodriguez, and others from Marcus's past. And names in Kishari script for Lyra's family. A memorial to those who shaped them. As the cabin took form, they added personal touches. Marcus carved designs into the doorframe. Lyra painted colors she remembered from home on the interior walls. They built a larger fireplace together using river stones. The new cabin was not just Marcus's place anymore. It was theirs. Spring arrived slowly. Snow melted to reveal green shoots pushing through dead leaves. The forest came alive with bird songs and animal activity. Lyra experienced Earth's seasons for the first time with wonder. She planted a garden using seeds. Marcus obtained from the distant town. She had never grown food before. Her world had automatic systems. But there was something satisfying about putting seeds in soil and watching them grow. Marcus taught her to fish in the river. She was terrible at first, scaring away fish with her impatience. But she learned. The first trout she caught herself made her scream with excitement like a child. They hiked through the mountains together. Marcus showed her hidden valleys and secret waterfalls. Lyra's enhanced eyesight let her spot wildlife Marcus would have missed. They made a good team. One evening they sat on the new porch watching the sunset. The cabin was nearly finished. Just some interior details remained. It had been 3 months since the battle. "Do you ever think about leaving?" Marcus asked. "Going back to space? Finding other Kishari refugees?" Lyra was quiet for a long moment. She watched the orange light paint the mountain peaks. She listened to the evening birds singing. She felt the solid wood of the porch they built together. "I think about my people sometimes," she said slowly. "I wonder if any survived." if they found safe worlds, if they rebuilt, she turned to Marcus. But when I think about leaving here, my chest feels tight. Wrong, like I would be running away again. You would not be running, Marcus said gently. You would be going home. Lyra shook her head. I already am home, Marcus. The galaxy taught me that home is not a planet or a city or even a species.
Home
is where someone sees you broken and helps you heal. Where someone stands beside you when they could run. Where you plant gardens and build things and feel like you belong. She gestured at the cabin, the forest, the mountains. This is home now. You made it my home when I had nowhere else to go. Marcus felt emotion swell in his chest. What if more Valdring come looking? What if the Empire changes its mind? Then we face them again, Lyra said with quiet strength. Together? Like Karash do. They sat in comfortable silence as stars began appearing. Lyra pointed out constellations from her navigational training. Marcus shared Earth stories about the same stars. Different cultures. Different worlds. Same sky. Marcus, Lyra said softly. Thank you for not turning away when you found me in the snow. Thank you for seeing a person who needed help instead of an alien problem to avoid. Thank you for crashing into my forest, Marcus replied with a slight smile. For reminding me that hiding from life is not living. For showing me that some things are still worth fighting for. We've saved each other, Lyra said. We did, Marcus agreed. More months passed. The garden grew and produced vegetables. They preserved food for winter. They improved the cabin's heating system. They built a workshop where Marcus could do carpentry and Lyra could tinker with technology. Lyra repaired her scanner fully and monitored space traffic. No Valdrine ships returned to their sector. The Empire had apparently accepted the false report of her death. She was free. Sometimes she picked up other signals. Refugee ships fleeing other conflicts, merchant vessels trading between worlds. Once, she detected what might have been another Kishari distress call. But it was too far away. Too faint to be certain. She told Marcus about it. He asked if she wanted to investigate. Lyra thought about it for a full day. Then she deactivated the long-range scanner. If it was real, they are beyond our help. And I cannot risk leading danger back here. To our home. Marcus understood. Sometimes survival meant making hard choices. Winter came again. Their first full year together completed. They celebrated with a feast Marcus called Thanksgiving. He explained the human tradition of being grateful for what you have. They sat together by the fire listing things they were grateful for. Warm shelter. Good food, safety, friendship, and each other. One cold evening in deep winter, Lyra was working on a new project. She had salvaged enough components to build a small communications beacon. Not strong enough to reach the galactic network, but strong enough to send messages to nearby space. What is that for? Marcus asked. For other refugees, Lyra explained. If any pass through this system fleeing the Voldrin or other threats, this beacon will guide them here. Let them know there is safe harbor on this world. If they need it, she looked at Marcus carefully. Only if you agree. This is your world. Your home. I will not invite others without your permission. Marcus thought about it. About what it meant. More aliens potentially coming to Earth. More danger. More complications. But also more people like Lyra. More refugees with nowhere to go. More chances to do what was right. Turn it on, he said. We have room. We have resources. And maybe we can help others the way we helped each other. Lyra smiled and activated the beacon. It sent a simple repeating message in standard galactic code. Safe harbor available? Refugees welcome. Ask for Lyra or Marcus. The message flew out into space at light speed. Whether anyone would receive it, they did not know. But the offer was made. Spring returned. 2 years since the crash now. The garden was expanded. The cabin had additions. Marcus and Lyra had routines and rhythms like any family. She taught him her language. He taught her to play guitar. They cooked together. They worked together. They sat by the fire on cold nights, sharing stories in comfortable silence. One morning, Lyra woke to find Marcus already up and working on something outside. She went to investigate. He had carved a sign from a piece of wood. Beautiful lettering in both English and Kishari script. He was mounting it by the front door. The sign read, "Chenlyra home. All are welcome here." Lyra read it and felt tears spring to her eyes. "Chenlyra? You are giving me your family name?" "You are family," Marcus said simply. "Not by blood, it's by choice. By standing together, Koresh. That deserves recognition." Lyra hugged him tight. This strange, wonderful human who had saved her life and given her a home and taught her that the galaxy was wrong about humans. They were not primitive. They were not weak. They had something more valuable than advanced technology. They had hearts that saw people instead of categories, courage that stood for what mattered, and loyalty that never wavered. Humans were not the strongest species, not the smartest or most advanced, but they had something that made them special. They had the ability to look at someone with nowhere left to go and say, "You can stay here. This is home now." That afternoon, Lyra worked in her garden while Marcus repaired the fence. They moved around each other with practiced ease. No longer refugee and rescuer, no longer alien and human, just family, just home. A shooting star crossed the sky overhead. Lyra paused to watch it. Maybe it was a meteor. Maybe it was a ship carrying another refugee fleeing disaster. If it was the latter, they would find a message waiting in the dark. A beacon saying someone out there cared. Someone would help. And on a small blue planet third from its star, in a cabin in the mountains, its people who had lost everything would be ready to offer what they had rebuilt. Not much by galactic standards. Just a home. Just safety. Just acceptance. But to someone with nowhere left to go, that was everything. Lyra smiled and returned to her garden. Marcus waved from across the yard. The sun shone warm on her silver fur. She was home. Finally, truly home, and it was enough. The end.